In this video, we will be creating this card inside of React Native using Expo and TypeScript. So I call it a card because it's elevated. Typically, these elevated, rounded, squares, rectangles, whatever, are considered cards, and they typically have some sort of shadow behind it. Inside of this card, there are two pieces of information. One is a label. One is a value. These two things belong together, so you can think of them as being within this, like this imaginary box, and they are spread to the far ends of the box. This row here of information, these pieces of information, related information, are centered both vertically and horizontally, and they have a bold texture to them. This card has curved corners, or what we call border radius, and this box itself, this card, is also horizontally centered, but vertically, it's near the top with some spacing above it. So what we're going to do is go ahead and replicate this inside of Expo very quickly. So I'm going to open up Xcode. I have my app.tsx. Let me go ahead and, do I have this started? I do. So I have Expo started, so that's good. Let me close this up, sorry. So open up app.js to start working on your app. So we have this view. We already are using, a container, if you will, which is this view. So anytime you think you see like a container of something, in this case, we have a container of these two values. Try to think of the word view. That's going to give us, what we need. So, this is our container. This is going to be the back, the white screen in the back. So I can go ahead and save this. You notice that I removed the text, so the text is removed from that. Save for me. I'm on a Mac. Is Command S. I'm sure there's other ways to do it. But what I can do is change this to red, and you see that the entirety of the background is red there. So I'm going to remove these two things. You don't need to worry about that for now. So what I need to do, like I said, is create that card. So for that card, we're going to think of we're going to use view again, and we're going to need to place inside. I'm going to do nothing to start. I'm going to actually just create this view. So then what you do is put style. You give it some styling, some look to it. Then we have styles.container. Styles is a local style sheet that we've created. We've imported style sheet from React Native. We use the .create function, .create method function, action, which we then supply it with some curly brackets, and then inside that curly brackets we have what we call objects, and these objects are referred to with essentially have a name or a key, so that later on we can say, okay, this is going to act like a container. I need the styles for container, which we are, specifying down here. So in this style, I'm going to go ahead and call a card. And up here, you saw me erase it. I'm going to go ahead and place it as a card. I'm going to give this a height of, let's say 20. I'm going to give this a width of, say, 100. And I'm going to give it a background color of red. Remember, we saw it up there. Now, if I go ahead and do this, we see the card is way up here. Now we can do this. What we want to do is center this. The first thing. Let's go ahead and do that. We want to center this. Sorry. So our first goal is to get it down to here, to where it essentially needs to be, and then we'll worry about making it not red. What you're going to do is we want to move this to the middle. So what we're going to do is do align self center. Line self center is going to put that up here, and then let's go ahead and add some space to the top. A space around an item is considered a margin, so I'm going to go ahead and do margin top, and it looks like we're in about the right spot. Then what I'm going to do is update this width. This width is obviously not the right width, and I'm not going to worry about the specifics of Figma here. I'm just going to get generally the idea. And you would say, like, if we move this over here, you would say this is what. 90% of the entire width. this is a width of 375. The entire thing has a width of 414. So if we did 375 divided by 414, we get about 90%, right? So I'm going to go ahead and place that in the middle. And then the height of this is 73, so I'll do about 75. So height, I'll do 75. That's going to give us a bigger box here. Then what I'm going to do is like I said, about 90%. So I'm going to do the, you can do double quotes or a single quote. I'm a single quote person. I'm going to do 90%. What that's going to do is it's going to stretch it 90% of the parent, and the parent is as big as it can get. And Flex 1 is what as big as it can get. That's what Flex 1 does, is expands it as much as possible. So we have a root container that is the entire screen, and that has a background color of white. We're representing that container using the view component, and specifying that we want to work with the styles, the container styles, by using styles here. Then inside we have a card, which is another view, which has a height of 75. We're giving it. It's going to be 90% of the width. So if I were to do, 200, the width of that would now be the width of the card would now be much smaller. 90% is, I don't know what, like 180 or something like that. So yeah, now the red's back. We are saying take myself, if we're in the card context now, right? We're talking about this card. So anything we have within these curly brackets, it pertains to just this card, nothing else. So we're saying this card should be 90% of its parent or its container, which we know, like I said, is the entirety of the screen. This self is this red box. We should center it in the middle of the screen. Align self. In this scenario, it aligns it horizontally. Then we say, okay, we want some space on top of it. There are different ways to do this and better ways to do this, but we're just going to say, give me some space above this item, and we want that space to be 100 size. And what that size is relevant. You'll learn that as you go. 100 looks different than it does for 50. 52 looks different than it does for 57, right? So, and then we're going to give that card a background of red. Let's go ahead and change that card. So inside of Figma, I'll go here. Like I said, Figma is, we don't need to worry about Figma too much, but I'm going to do hashtag F, and that's going to give us this. And we can't really tell the difference, right, because it is so clear. So what I'm going to do is, does this have a border? I don't think it has a border. It does not. So I'm going to go ahead and add some shadow here. And I actually forget how to do the shadow. So do I have Google up? No, I'm going to bring Google down here. So I have this up here. Shadow, React Native. So shadow radius, it's these things here. So I'm going to go down here. I'm going to do brackets shadow. This is called a comment. It allows us to just give some extra insight into what's going on. And then I'm going to play around with these numbers, and we can go ahead and do that. So we have shadow offset. So if you notice a shadow, like if the shadow was right underneath the card, we won't be able to determine that. But now let's say I change this to 10, you'll see that it goes more to the right. And if I change this to -10, it's going to go more to the top. So that's a big shadow. So we can keep it there just for sake of the demo here. But now we have shadow opacity. This is how dark is it, how close to black. Because right, opacity of 1 is just you can't see through it at all. But if I do a 0.01, you can see that it's a much fader, much lighter shadow. And then shadow radius is how far away does it go? How far away does the shadow disperse? Right. So if I do just 1, you see how it gets darker. Or it gets not darker, but like more full. That's because the shadow is focused in a small area. Whereas if I do 1, you can see the shadow. It starts to blur at the end. If I do 10, it's even more of a blur, right? And 20, that's what happens if I do 100. How big do I have to get it before you can't tell? That's about it. I can't I can't I can't tell anything. Maybe there's some down here, but. shadow radius of 1. We'll update that. I'll do 10. I think 10 is actually what we normally do. But then what I'm going to do, I want to bring it back, right? I don't want it to be way up there. I want it to be around the card here. We can see, that it is there a little bit. Maybe we update the opacity some. Let's see. What are we looking for? Let me bring this over here. So if I go into here, you can see drop shadow, click into this, X, Y, so it has a Y of 2, so I think that's height, a height of 2. It has a blur of 10, a spread of 2. What's a spread? Not sure. Maybe let's do maybe a 3. What's the color? Yeah, 30%. Okay, so it's 30% there. So now let's go ahead and, so that looks like a good shadow. The issue right now is that, we have these sharp edges here. So those are the corner of this card or border radius. You can go ahead and we want to go ahead and round that. So how we do that? I'm going to come back up here. Is something called a border radius, and we're going to give it let's say 15. What do we do it on here? We do 10 here. So we got 10. Okay, so that is not the exact shadow, but maybe something like this. Nah. What if it's 1? Yeah, but that's okay. That's our card. That's fine for now. So now what we want to do is this text here. So you'll notice that this view here, there's an opening tag and a closing tag, and then this one here we have just a single tag, right? So these two belong together. Line 6 and line 8. This is essentially starting the view. This is ending the view. Whereas this one, it's starting and ending all in one. And that's because there's nothing, this view doesn't contain anything at this point. It's just a square, it's just a box. But if we want to put something inside of it, let's say like text, we have to then open the component up and provide a closing tag. Then what I'm going to do is to put any type of text in there. Text is also from React Native, and then anything we put inside of here is going to show up there. Cool. So like I said, remember this is one text, and this is, let's say I want this to be item 1, I forget what it was, and then this be $5. You'll see that it comes one after it, one on top of another. That's the default behavior of text of React Native, and the text components is that everything comes one after another. So if we wanted to put that put the items in a row, we would have to go ahead and wrap that around and have a container around that to do so. Now we could do it inside of here, and it's probably it's there's two different ways to do it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and actually create another view, open this up and bring these up, and then I'm going to give some styles here for this container. And when I'm talking about what container am I talking about? I'm talking about this container. Let's say these two are in a container like this. This container has 2 elements. Item 1, $5. This row container This row container has a container of itself, which is this card, and this card has a container of itself, which is the entirety of the screen. So I'm going to do styles dot. I'm going to call it row. And if I'm going to give this row a background color of, let's say, blue. So we can see that this row, this entire row is blue, but we have the 2 items here that are on top of each other, as opposed to being separate. So what I'm going to do is do flex direction, and I'm going to give it a row. So flex direction, if we want to, we don't have to get into flex or the direction, but if what it does is it allows us to say, put these things in a column formation or on a row formation. By default, and this is super hard to see, so let me do yellow. Yeah, there we go. Sorry about that. So this is, like I said, row. By default, it's column. And since it's the default, we don't have to provide it if we wanted the column format. But if we wanted, like I said, we want it to be next to each other, we have to do a row. And now let's say that we want these items to be far apart. We want them to be as far apart as possible while also giving us some space on the side. So how do we make it as far as possible? We do something called justifyContent, which is going to be space between. Now, justifyContent behaves differently depending on if we are in a row or if we are in a column. If we are in row formation and we have visually, we visually confirm that we are in that formation. Or I guess it would be orientation or formation. I'm not sure. Let me know what you think. And we use justifyContent space between, or really space anything. It's going to, all of these are going to work on a horizontal basis, right? So if I do center, it's going to put it in the middle. Space, let me just go back to here. Flex start is going to put it in the beginning. Flex end is going to put it over there. Space around is going to put some equal space here, equal space here, and then here and here. Space between is as far apart. This is the one we're actually going to use. And then there is, I think, one more. Space evenly. Space evenly, space around. What's the difference between that? Oh, I think it's around. Evenly is 1, 2, 3 sections, whereas around is 4 sections. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. So what we want is space between. Now we want to make sure that like this row is only, what would you say, like 80% of that, right? There's 318 minus 375. 318 minus 375 is 85%. So what I'm going to do is width is going to be 85%. That's going to give us this. And then how would we put this in the middle? Again, align self center. That would put us in the middle. Now horizontally. Now we need to be in the middle of the space above. This one is a little bit tricky. We have to go back up to the parent, and inside of the parent, we have to say align item. I think it's actually justifyContent center, right? Now, justifyContent center in this one gave us, aligned us vertically, whereas justifyContent down here aligns us horizontal. That's because flex direction up here is the default, which is column, which is up and down. And then flex direction down here is now row, which says, okay, justifyContent now works on a horizontal basis. So I'm going to go ahead and remove yellow. We got the idea that it's now in the middle. Let's go ahead and update the text here to use bold. So I'm going to do text. I'm going to start from down here because we can visually think about what it is we want to do without actually getting into the actual building of it, if you will. So I'm going to update the font size a little bit to 20. I'm going to give it some font weight, which has a number of different values. If I do 200, it's different from bold. So I'll go ahead and show that. So now I have this text. What I'm going to do is to go into here, styles.text. Styles.text. Now we can see a much different size. That's probably a little bit too big, but there's 200, there's 500. I like a nice 700. But then if you really want to be aggressive, there is a bold, which you honestly can't tell the difference too much. So I'll stay with 700. And then what we want is about 14, maybe 16. Looks a little bit smaller. And Figma of these has 14. So that's probably what we'll stick at. So yeah, that is how you create that card inside of React Native. We want to have a couple things. One is the usage of the view tag, how you can have views inside of views. Now, a question for you is how can we do away with this? What do we have to do away with that? Right? That's ugly in there. So let's say we have card. I don't know, this question for you. I guess I'll just go ahead and do it. What we now need to do in here is flex direction row. Now that puts our stuff at the top, right? What we would then do is probably get down to here, and let's just work through this, how this would look like. So we don't have rows. Sorry, that's why we're not there. Yeah, I mean, I don't know that we would actually want to do this without a view card. It is a little unideal to have so many views nested within each other in this case. But inside of here, what we would typically have is like another row, so that it's not just like one view inside of a view. And then down here, we would have, maybe even like a second card that does something else. So having, it would justify the usages of the views more. Whereas, in this scenario, what's the switch here? I guess nothing. Oops. In this scenario, it's just view, 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 and that's not ideal. But it does, what we need it to do. So yeah, thanks.